So our outreach is to promote e-payments, especially to the small businesses and SMEs. There are various reform measures that Bank Negara has put in place, various enabling factors that have been worked on that have brought about the level of e-payment services to where it is today. So if you conduct an e-payment transaction today, you will be able to enjoy some of these value-adding services that have been put in place by the banking institutions in the last couple of years. For instance, if you key in an e-payment transaction, you will be able to put in a payment reference. And so the receiver of that e-payment transaction will be able to know in his bank statement who the sender is and what those payments are made for. I can key in an invoice number and let you know that I'm making a payment to you for this particular invoice. Unlike paper-based instruments like checks, you would need to reconcile those transactions with your secondary record to see what invoices have been paid, or which checks have cleared and which checks have bounced. This year, there are many other initiatives that the banking institutions are making as well, and a significant amount of investment will be invested in the infrastructure because banks have transactions. Let me quote to you, IBG transactions in 2016 is estimated to be about 175 million transactions. For the IBFT is about 90 million transactions. So they are quite significant. So there's likely to be areas where there are operational or teething issues or learning curve issues that will be experienced as people embrace new ways of doing things. And so there will be this hand-holding that the banks will be doing with their customers. And I suppose over time, as people become more used to doing these transactions and learning about those services, that there will be less of these complaints that will come about. And I don't know what the volume of complaints there is today. It may not be significant.
You don't have any statistics?
Complaints, no. But I do handle complaints when they are channeled to me. Personally, we have not received a surge in the issues that have been given to my department to undertake to facilitate a resolution on behalf of the customers. So there's no particular surge in any of these complaints to my department.
The Association of Banks in Malaysia also has a complaints department. I think a lot of this, as Mr. Tan has rightly pointed out, are just teething problems as people get acquainted with the IBP and the IBFT. And these complaints, if any, are always resolved, Mr. Tan, with the customers and the banks directly. I think the banks have been able to handle and to resolve the complaints. A lot of it.
So even if I do electronic pickpocketing and get your card number, I will not be able to counterfeit the chip. And so I cannot use your credentials to then do another chip transaction. We have various safeguards in place. Today, if someone takes your card and copies your 16-digit PAN number on the face of the card and goes to the back of your card and sees your CVV 3-digit number and your expiry date on the front of the card, they can do a card not present transaction. They can do an e-commerce transaction. But in Malaysia, all issuers are required to facilitate a dual-factor authorization. In other words, you will not be able to complete an e-commerce transaction without having a transaction authorization code keyed in. So in other words, you will receive the tag in your phone to complete that transaction. However, there are certain merchants which we may be buying things from, overseas merchants that are not governed by Bank Negara Malaysia, that may not facilitate the two-factor authentication. And so when you actually do transactions with these merchants, they will not ask you for a TAC. What happens when there is a fraud and under those scenarios, would be that the international rules that is enforced by Visa, MasterCard will ensure that the liability as a consequence of any fraud transactions will be borne by the entity abroad. So Malaysian card holders will never bear that risk, given that we already have mandated two-factor authentication for card not present transaction. So for electronic pickpocketing, while they may be able to take your PAN number, they will not be able
Two types of payment. One is using your login ID and also without your password and login ID. Okay? So all payment will be going through online banking payment portal. Okay. So the flow should be looking like this. Look like this. You go to your website.